Namaste everyone. I'm Roshan Karyappa and welcome to another episode of the Bharat Varta podcast. We have three very special birthdays coming up this week. These are three legends who've changed Indian cricket and indeed contemporary Indian culture itself quite tangibly. Uh, Mahendra Singh Dhoni celebrates his birthday on 7th of July, Saurav Ganguly on 8th of July, and Sunil Gavaskar on 11th of July. Now, for a 90s kid, there aren't too many better ways you can spend your Sunday than discussing cricket with your friends. And so that's what I'm going to be doing as well. So, joining me in this discussion are ardent cricket fans Ashish Chandorkar, Srivatsa Subbanna, and Abhishek Paul. Hi, guys. How are you guys doing?
Hey, Carrie.
Hi, Carrie.
Yeah,
Hi, Carrie.
so this should be a real fun chat. To begin things, quick favorites around the table. No points for guessing who's my favorite. But Gavaskar, Gavaskar, Dhoni, or Ganguly? Ashish, we'll begin with you.
Difficult one actually. As a captain, I would say Ganguly, but obviously my generation has a very different regard for Gavaskar as a player and as someone who's changed the face of the cricket scene in India. But as a captain, I would go with Ganguly.
Okay. What about you, Srivatsa?
I would agree with that. So, as a captain, I think Ganguly was very different from the other two. He changed Indian cricket in a lot of ways. As a batsman, though, Gavaskar holds a very special place, especially for someone like me who grew up in Mumbai, watching a lot of very good batsmen. Almost all of them kind of modeled on the Gavaskar, like very textbook style of batting. So.
Right. And then Abhishek?
So tough call for me, right? But I'll go with Dhoni being my favorite of the three, and then Ganguly, and then Gavaskar.
Okay, yeah, I mean, not at all a difficult decision for me. I think it's Ganguly all the way, just because he infused some much needed balls into Indian cricket, and also, I mean, his development of young players like Yuvraj and Dhoni, right, indelibly changed Indian cricket. Right, guys, so let's begin with Gavaskar. Who wants to talk about his impact on Indian cricket, not just as a batsman, as a captain, but overall significance? Ashish, I think you might be most appropriate to begin.
Sure, Carrie. We should look at the context in which Gavaskar played his cricket and also led the team. India was not a very successful cricketing nation for most of the time that Gavaskar played his cricket, right? If we were supposed to be very poor tourists, we would lose overseas games with big margins, couldn't play fast bowling. Gavaskar had, Gavaskar was the only, there was a joke that if he got out, then basically only had to get 2 or 3 people more listeners, and then the rest of the team will crumble itself, right? So, and it was more often than not, it was true that he was like the main line of Indian defense. So I think as a batsman, he has had very profound impact on how Indian cricket has evolved. As Vatsa said, a lot of players have modeled their technique and also the way of thinking on how Gavaskar used to bat. So as someone who's had a serious impression, I think he would be right up there along with Tendulkar in terms of how the future generation has kind of based their game on, right? Right up there. As a captain, I think there are some things which are probably not very well appreciated. See, India only started winning its first. We won the first tour in 1967 overseas when Pataudy was the captain. Then under Wadekar, we had a couple of wins in England and one in West Indies. So it was not very common for India to actually be winning test matches overseas, right? So and then when Gavaskar took over as a captain, he had multiple stints actually, but in between Bedi came in and then Kapil was there as well. But the few things which he brought in, one was that the fact that standing up to the authority, and in those days authority used to be England and Australia in terms of how the game was managed, right? So yeah. how the rules were being interpreted, I think some of that discipline or that aggression, which the new generation knows Ganguly mainly for, I think probably started with Gavaskar in some ways. how you would distribute let's say the man of the match awards, right? Where there was allegation that Indian cricketers used to be very selfish. They would play for their own awards or their own, I mean, they used to shine individually and not in the team, right? So like, can the award money for man of the match be divided between the team thing rather than an individual thing, right? So some of those things which Gavaskar brought in, and even his aggression, like if you remember the 1981 tour where he walked off from the ground after having been given out wrongly in his assessment, and he took the non-striker along. I think it was Chetan Chauhan that who kind of took back with him.
Who he shoved off field.
Some of those gestures. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it would sound very like non-gentlemanly in the traditional definition and the interpretation of cricket. The fact is that some of that was needed as in terms of instilling self-confidence in the team and self-belief in the team, right? Otherwise, it was just a bunch of having a good time and losing and coming back. So I think in that sense, I would rate his influence fairly highly in the context of what his ecosystem was. Yeah. Perhaps not in terms of results, because it took a while for the team to regather and get the right players, etc. But I think he was where this confidence started. Yeah. Where Indians could look in the eyes of the English and the Australian cricketers and sledge or fight or, of course, do well on the field itself.
Yeah. No, there's a common thread of irreverence among all of the three gentlemen that we are comparing, right? Whether it's Gavaskar, Dhoni, or Ganguly. And Gavaskar, especially, I mean, the era that he was coming off of, I think it's cricket being a game of the Nawabs and whatnot, right? I think it's particularly contrasting the way he played his cricket, whether it's walking off, when he was given out wrongly in his opinion, or, to standing up to the West Indian fast bowling or whatever it is, right? Vatsa, do you also want to talk about Gavaskar, the batsman? I mean, the first true batting hero that India had, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, not just as a batsman, but also as a captain. So I think, Ashish has covered some of this, that we were generally not very good at playing fast bowling. Indian batsmen were usually afraid of, standing up to fast bowlers. And what Gavaskar did was, he was an opener. So he always, faced like the best bowlers the opposition had, right? I mean, there's one incident, where he tried to bat at number 4 because he was by far the best batsman in his team. And when he walked in, there were 2 wickets gone, and I think the score was probably 0 or 1. And, Michael Holding, I think it was, who mentioned to him, man, whatever happens, when you walk in, the score is still 0. That kind of a thing. And there's another thing about, Gavaskar, the captain, just add on to what Ashish was saying. People look at, Gavaskar as someone who played a lot for records and who was very selfish. But as a captain, he was pretty unselfish. In the sense, there's the 1985 World Championship of Cricket, which India won, which really cemented, India's position as a strong one-day team. And, because people were saying that, the 1983 World Cup win was kind of a fluke, but 1985 proved that it was not really a fluke, that India could hold its own against the best one-day team. Gavaskar was the captain of that team. So he batted at number 6 or 7 series. Considering he's been an opener, all his career, it would have been very easy for him to take strike, against the new ball. But he did not. He went ahead and got in Shrikant, who was probably the first pinch hitter in international cricket.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was much later in the 90s that you had Mark Greatbatch in 92, and then you had Jayasuriya Kaluwitharna in 96. But Gavaskar was the first guy who saw, that the rules were kind of stacked in favor of batsmen in the initial overs, and they could take advantage if you had a very aggressive batsman at the top. He was also, I think, the first captain who brought in spinners in one-day cricket, right? So in the 1985 World Championship of Cricket, you had Ravi Shastri and Lakshman Sivaramakrishnan bowling the middle overs. And his reasoning was very simple. The tournament is happening in Australia, and it's going to be bloody hard for batsmen to clear the ground, right? And Lakshman Sivaramakrishnan bowled round the wicket, which was kind of unheard of in those days. For a spinner to come round the wicket was considered, very negative
Defensive.
and not in the spirit of cricket and so on, right? But Gavaskar did all of this, and in fact, in that tournament, India bowled out the opposition in every game except the final, where they took 9 wickets. So that was mostly due to very aggressive captaincy and very good planning. In addition, it was also, I think, if you leave out the last 10-12 years, it was probably the fittest Indian team ever in terms of fielding, the athleticism, and so on. A lot of these things were brought in by Gavaskar, the captain. Yeah, and of course, as a batsman, his influence is there. I mean, his record speaks for himself. First person to cross 10,000 runs, cross Bradman. All of that is there, right? And doing so without a helmet against some of the fastest bowlers in the world, right? So terrific cricketer about whom a lot is not known to today's generation, right? So it's a good point to kind of bring it up. So yeah.
No, they know him more for his commentary, which sorry to say, pales in comparison with his batting. Right?
He's been commenting for a long time, right?
Yeah. But that's also because his batting
with good trick.
Yeah, but that's also because his batting was at such a extraordinary level, right? And speaking of which, I mean, there's often these comparisons with the past and the present, right? The kind of bowling attacks that, let's say, Gavaskar faced, and the kind of pitches that he played at, how many test matches outside, and so on and so forth. So Abhishek, I mean, how do we kind of weigh these factors in and look at Gavaskar, the batsman, compared to, let's say, a Tendulkar or a Kohli?
Sure. So, coming to Gavaskar, while I obviously never got to see him live, right? We've read a little bit, on the internet or some books. And so one of the interesting things I read recently in an article which came in was about the 85 World Championship of Cricket, which Vatsa was just talking about. So, after the 83 World Cup win, which, as again he said, some people were calling it a fluke, India actually went into a pretty bad run of form between the two tournaments, losing a number of series at home and away, right? And so leading up to this 1985 tournament, there was a sort of discussion on who would be the captain, and the choice was apparently between Gavaskar and Ravi Shastri, who was heading into some good individual form at that time. Anyhow, Gavaskar got chosen, and what he did very smartly at that time was bring in a lot of new players, because he wanted a team that had not been, that was kind of fresh and not suffered such traumatic defeats in the lead up. And so he brought in, youngsters like Sadanand Vishwanath, who was a very exciting wicket keeper that time, Sivaramakrishnan, who was probably one of the best bowlers in that tournament, and other players, right, like Chetan Sharma, Manoj Prabhakar, and so on. So what he did was basically very smartly, he freshened up the team, made it a very good fielding side, and also, tactics in terms of his usage of spinners or himself coming down to bat and, allowing people like Srikanth to play at the top of the innings. So clearly he was a very thinking man's captain, right? And of course, people like Gavaskar and Kapil Dev in that era were basically leaders, who led by example themselves, right? Being one of the best batsmen, or in Kapil's case, all-rounder.
Yeah.
So now coming to, the batting prowess that you were talking about, right? So it's, of course, extremely difficult to compare across eras, because you have to look at the quality of opposition, the quality of support that you get yourselves in the team, and then you look at, let's say, the quality of pitches and so on, or the other kind of support that teams today get in terms of, preparation, analytics, and things like that. So definitely among our great players, right, that India has had over the generation, Gavaskar definitely played in an era which was most difficult for cricketers per se. And if you look at his record, especially against the West Indies, I think it's a remarkable record, facing at any time four very quick, fast bowlers in the opposition. Always, almost inevitably, coming up with very, very impressive numbers in terms of the centuries he scored or the number of runs in a particular series. So if I take back to what Ashish said, right, one of our initial overseas wins was in 1970-71 under Wadekar. And Gavaskar, I think it was his first series, and he scored really heavily in that series. And it is said that the West Indies, after that defeat, decided to sort of totally transform their cricket because they were kind of fed up with this person, right, scoring so many runs, and they really moved to even more aggressive all-pace attack kind of a strategy after that defeat against India, right? And of course, Gavaskar scored again and again against them, even those quick attacks. So, to summarize, I think while it's very hard to compare Gavaskar and Tendulkar, for example, and Tendulkar's mastery across multiple formats of the game probably counts in his favor, but to be fair to Gavaskar, the quality of attacks that he faced was probably the best.
Yeah, undoubtedly. And another common thread with all the three of them, and probably, I mean, this is an obvious thing, is the longevity of their careers, right? I mean, I think Gavaskar played probably around 16 or 17 years. Ganguly played another 16 years, and Dhoni maybe more than that, right? Coming to Ganguly, right? Obviously, he inherited a team which was, what would you say? I mean, it was just about budding at that point of time and then completely transformed the team, right? So Ashish, let's try to understand the team that he inherited. What were some things that he did that catapulted the team into success?
Yeah, pretty interesting, Carrie, right? So if you look at the late 90s, India has, so if you look at, let's say, the ODI record, now India actually failed to win several, I mean, not at the world stage. I mean, of course, there were bilateral series were always there, but we hadn't won World Cup in 96. We had a pretty disastrous run in 99. Test matches, again, while Sachin probably had his best year in 98, and I mean, the 99 year, the season was also pretty good for him. But India did not do too well in those 3-4 years, right? And then there was also the specter of match fixing, which was there. Everything was under the scanner. People would pick up any random thing and say that, okay, this thing was fixed, or this player had cheated. So, and Tendulkar as a captain had put too much pressure on himself, right? So he was almost trying to solve everything himself, and then essentially creating more.
That's a nice charitable way of putting it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people have this trait, right? Like they want to solve.
I understand. I was just kidding.
There's a difference between motivating others to perform at your level versus you trying to perform at everyone else's level collectively and alone, right? So I think that line was crossed in his captaincy. So now the team was demotivated. The performances were not adding up. Even the balance was not there, right? Like Dravid used to be in the ODIs, but he was keeping, etc. I mean, a lot of issues were there in terms of the team lineup itself. And the new crop was not coming up. There were controversies earlier around Kamli's exit and then Sidhu's exit and Manjrekar's career getting over. So the one whole generation of, curtains were coming down on several players who were considered key just 3-4 years ago. So Ganguly took over with that fairly tumultuous background, right? And then his own personal image, probably unfairly crafted due to the 93. The 92 Australia tour was that he was very arrogant and he would not, want to play second fiddle or help the team, etc. So I think he also had a personal baggage in that sense. So the fact that he got elevated to the captainship fairly early on in his international career and under tremendous strain and strain not just as in a of the job, but the whole cricket world was crumbling, right? So to me, I
One,
think he had two.
Sorry, one point to add to that as well, right? I mean, this is also the time when Pakistan and Sri Lanka had bashed us pretty badly.
Yes.
I mean, like the likes of Sanat Jayasuriya, Saeed Anwar. Yeah, I mean, those are not very pleasant memories for any Indian cricket fan. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, India being the third best team in Asia almost was a shocker in those times, right? And Bangladesh had just come in as well. So there were only three teams. So and we were like the third of the three. So I think that also was a bit of a shock. So to my mind, the two most important things or contributions which Ganguly made, and I think a lot of people will not be able to replicate that, was one was to basically turn around the confidence in the whole construct of the cricket as a game, as a business. Again, I mean, that was very critical. I think he was probably the most suited, and I think kudos to the selectors of that time that he was given that opportunity. I don't think anyone else could have done that job, what he did in terms of bringing the confidence back into the game. The second thing was also, which was over a period of time, but in terms of how he got new players to come in and succeed. And I think several people owe their careers to Ganguly in that sense. But the faith which he had in individuals who he picked, and also the right individuals. I mean, it wasn't that he was showing faith irrespective of the results, right? I mean, the fact was that the people actually performed well when they were playing with Ganguly. So I think those two, in terms of developing new talent, not sticking to the old methods, and turning around the cricket perception. I think those two are invaluable contributions, and I think no one will be able to replicate that to the extent that Ganguly did in that short window of 3-4 years.
Yeah, no, I mean, everything that he did was also subject to the kind of team that he inherited and the circumstances as well, right? I mean, it's sort of a truism right now, but really, I mean, you had to be there at that point of time to really sense how much of a baggage this was. Whether it's with the match fixing or whether it's with getting thrashed left, right, and center by your other Asian cousins, whatever, right? So, what I want to talk about, or rather, I mean, I think I should go to our resident Bengali on the panel, Abhishek, about the Prince of Calcutta, right? So, do you have any more to say than what Jeffrey Boycott has already said about Sourav Ganguly's batting?
Sure. So I think so the thing about Ganguly is that he's probably the most interesting character or story about Indian cricket, right? And obviously one of the most controversial personalities. So I just read out a paragraph from a really nice article by an author called Rahul Bhattacharya, which basically captures the essence of Ganguly really well. So he writes that at some stage, hard to say when, Sourav Ganguly no longer remained a cricketer and turned into a folk hero and a folk villain. Averages and the rest came into it, but with Ganguly, things became matter of convictions of the soul. Anything he did or did not do could provoke an outcry. Everything that was done to him or not done to him could provoke an outcry. Ganguly issues took the form of movements. In many ways, he's the cricketer phenomenon in India's pop culture, right? So, I mean, those of us who have been fans of cricket for a long time would know, and this was basically written during the whole Greg Chappell Ganguly battle that was going on, right? So, I mean, sort of to add on, Ganguly, became the captain during this, very difficult time where India needed to turn its whole cricket around. And just a few things or thoughts that I think are important are, for example, number one, he brought in, or the Indian board brought in, John Wright as the coach, who was the first foreign coach. And together, I think they were able to build up a good cricketing culture around the team. I think, if I recall, there are interviews of Indian players who will say that prior to the 2001 series versus Australia is the toughest camp that any one of them have gone through in their careers. So they started taking the cricket side of it very seriously, and to compete with Australia sort of became an obsession with the Indian cricket team of that era, right? Secondly, I think the 2003 World Cup itself is something which is very dear to our hearts, even though we didn't win it, right? For those of us who didn't experience 1983
Yeah.
until 2011, right, when we won it, the 2003 one remains our favorite World Cup for a number of reasons. And if you look at that tournament, India was sort of going into, again, pretty bad run of form, losing to West Indies at home, losing in New Zealand, and then having a really poor start, right, where we lost to Australia pretty comprehensively in the second match. But Ganguly and the team were able to turn that around with sort of 7 or 8 consecutive wins, and they played some of the best cricket that we had seen in that tournament, including the famous victories against Pakistan and England, especially, right? So, he was really good in terms of identifying young cricketers who had talent, but who had also the potential to be match winners. And so his backing of players like Sehwag, Yuvraj Singh, Harbhajan Singh, and even some others like Mohammad Kaif, etc. He gave them, and of course Zahir Khan, who I missed to say, right? So these kind of players that he picked and persisted with, despite maybe some indifferent form, and sort of showing the belief in them which some others might not have, done a lot more chopping and changing. So his belief was that, look, we will have good days and bad days. On the bad days, the opposition wins, but on the good days, the players should be so good that they take the team to victory. And basically, there's a common thread running through most of the players that I said, right? They're really sort of attacking players in what they do, whether it's batting or bowling, and they had the sort of match-winning potential in them. Yeah. So that's another thing worth talking about Ganguly.
And all of them played for 15 plus years as well.
That's right. So that investment really paid off for India in the long run as well.
Yeah. I mean, one of my memories of the 2003 World Cup was, I think it was Krishnamacharya Srikanth. He was asked, very seriously, he was asked what position should Ganguly bat at? And he said number 14, right? So, yeah, I mean, the sheer amount of pressure on him to kind of bring this team together and perform. So, there's not much to say after, Abhishek has waxed eloquent about Ganguly. But I think we're still missing the batting side of it, right? I mean, the guy was a heck of a batsman. Whether it's the offside stroke playing, or even those clean sixes that he used to just dance around down the pitch and hit those spinners for those lofty shots, right? I mean, and this coming off of the time when people would barely clear the boundary. Here is a guy who's sending the ball back, 2 or 3 convincingly out of the ground, right? So you want to talk about the batting a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So there's a little bit of trivia, about Ganguly. Ganguly is a right-hander who bats left-handed, and the reason he started batting left-handed was a lot of people are not aware, but his brother Snehashish was also a fairly successful first-class cricketer, and he was left-handed. So the fact that he could use his kit was, why he started batting left-handed. And it turned out to be a good decision, not just for him, but for us fans as well, right? So while, there's a lot spoken about how elegant he is, Dravid has famously said that on the offside, first there is God and then there is Saurav. Then obviously Jeff Boycott has talked a lot about his batting. There is an element of grit as well that was there in his batting, which is kind of missed out because he made things appear so easy when he batted, right? So in fact, when he made his Test debut against England in '96, Sidhu had just walked out of the tour because he had a fight with Azhar. Like he behaved basically like a spoiled kid and left England and came back to India. And Ganguly ended up making his debut. And England in the first half of the summer is not a very...
All things weighed, I think Sidhu's biggest contribution to Indian cricket.
Yes, I would agree with that. That and hurting his back in '94 when Sachin came out and opened for the first time. So that's probably his biggest contribution.
Third would be his ridiculous diving in that India-Australia Test match series, I think.
Yes, that's from an entertainment stand.
When he became Jaunty Singh, right?
Jaunty Singh, correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So England in the first half, it's first half of the summer. Usually what they say is when you're touring England, it's better to tour in the second half because the pitches are flattened, the sun is out, you can score a lot of runs. But we went in the first half and it's cold, the ball swings. So it's not very easy to bat. So for someone who is making his debut and then scoring 200s back to back in England, says a lot about the mental strength of the batsman as well. And it was a series we fought back well, after losing the first test where, most of the team didn't turn up. But second test, we should have almost won. But for Daryl Hare, I think, was the umpire. And third test, also I think we held our own. But my favorite Ganguly innings is the one he played in Brisbane in 2003. So, I mean, Brisbane is the only ground where even Tendulkar doesn't have a Test 100 because the ball swings. It's a bouncy pitch. It's not a very easy place for a batsman from the subcontinent to come in and beat. India were down, I think, couple of wickets. Steve Buckner got Tendulkar's wicket again, as he did on many occasions during his career as an umpire. But when Ganguly came in, he batted with Akash Chopra, and I think that was an innings where he attacked and he defended and he played really, really well. And that actually more than the partnership between Dravid and Lakshman in Adelaide, that set the tone for that entire Test series. That and there is obviously the way he ended his Test career. Right, he scored 100 in his last series, and he went out on a high. So as a batsman, not just the elegance and the timing and everything, the sheer grit and wanting to fight it out is something that Ganguly will be remembered for.
And what's the other part of that you can see on Carey's screen to the right of Carey?
Yes.
13th of July 2002, right? So even that anniversary is not very far off. Just 8 days. That's the 18th year. In my view, barring the 281 from Lakshman, this day, 13 July 2002, was a turning point in Indian.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a very significant day because the way we won, I mean, we were 146 for 5, chasing about 325. And then even after that, Yuvraj got out, I think, around 260s, right? So there's still some distance to go. And then CAF kind of cleared it with Harbhajan and then later Zahir. So the fact is that that kind of confidence which he instilled, and I can see Abhishek spoke a little bit about the fandom, right? I've seen it in person in Pune when IPL Pune has had IPL teams on and off, right? So when the first team was there, PWI Pune Warriors India, Ganguly was the captain, and for that 2 months period, I think Marathi was forgotten in the city. We had become a Bengali city. If you went to the stadium, the Pune stadium, you would be better off speaking Bengali than Marathi, right? So that the entire stadium used to be chock-a-block with the sizable Bengali population which Pune has. But I think the fandom was just unbelievable. It would even have surpassed, like Sachin and Wankhede versus Ganguly in Eden or in those 2 months in Pune would be fairly comparable in that sense, right? So the respect and the love which people had for his stature as a captain, which I think very significant because while we had Wadekar and Gavaskar and Kapil, but what really matters is that the way he conducted himself as a leader, the way he influenced a whole generation of cricketers, I think that will stay non-comparable in my view, despite the successes which we had with Dhoni and now with Kohli later on.
Yeah. No, just a minor but significant point on the batting itself. I'm not sure if you guys remember. I think there was a period when people thought that he couldn't bat against the short pitch stuff, and you would have a bunch of bowlers go up around the wicket and bowl it to his body, right? Now the truth is, if anyone's played cricket, that short pitch stuff is not anybody's favorite, right? Because you can only do two things: you can either fend it off, you can escape, or you can hook it, right? All three are like sort of the difficult options, I would say, right? But he managed to tide over that, and that's again one of those classic markers of a leader, right? It's how you get up when you fall, really. So and speaking of leadership, the third person in focus is our favorite Mahendra Singh Dhoni, right? Again, he's been immortalized in a movie, I think my favorite aspect of Dhoni's story is the fact that, I think, we got to see him after maybe, 10 or 15 years of his playing cricket, or maybe more, right, on the screen. But then, imagine being a Dhoni when you're in school or maybe in college even, right? You are somewhat of a batsman. You are a wicket keeper, right? Imagine the amount of conviction you need as a Dhoni to say that, hey, forget about, and that too coming from a really, really hyper-competitive school environment, from a tier 2, tier 3, tier 2 city, Patna, right? To say that, no, I'm going to become a cricketer, and coming from a very, very middle-class background as well. I think that is truly amazing. Sorry, I think he's from Ranchi. So I got that kind of right, I suppose. So anyway,
yeah,
right for a South Indian anyway. So that really is amazing to me, because to have that conviction to go out and say, I'm going to make a career in cricket, that's really, really special, right? Vatsa, we know that you're a Dhoni fan for sure, right? Do you want to again talk about the kind of team that Dhoni inherited, and how he sort of scaled the team?
Sure. I think once Ganguly left captaincy, and he had Greg Chappell as a coach, with Dravid as a captain, right? And we had a disastrous 2007 World Cup. We lost to Bangladesh. We couldn't even make it to the Super 8s. The entire, I think it's the most forgettable tournament for me personally as a cricket fan, that an Indian cricket team has been a part of. And Greg Chappell himself was a fairly abrasive character. He wanted things done in a certain way. He did not really understand that India is very different from Australia. You cannot really run the Indian team the way an Australian team is run. And after all of that, Dravid suddenly, I think he resigned as captain. After England, the team kind of needed someone, and there was a T20 World Cup happening in 2007, and Ganguly, Tendulkar, Dravid, all of them had backed off, and it wouldn't have been easy, being a selector at that point of time, trying to figure out. First, there's this new format. You played one T20 international before that, so you have to figure out a team, and on top of that, you need a captain, because probably your top 3 choices of captains have said that they're not going to play that tournament, right? And that's where Dhoni's journey as a captain started, and that's where he took over as captain of a very young team. And of course, his leadership. Dhoni himself is a very thinking cricketer. We don't give him enough credit for that. We see him as this batsman, who hits big sixes, who can bludgeon bowlers all over the park. But if you see him behind the stumps, he's always giving hints to the bowlers, continuously changing fielders' positions based on what he sees. So his mind is always there in the game, which, as a wicket keeper, you can't take your eye off the ball, right? If you're fielding, say, at third man or even mid off, mid on, you know that, the ball is not going to come to you most of the time. So you can kind of relax once in a while. But as a keeper, you literally expect that every ball will probably come to you, and you have to keep an eye on where the ball is, right? So that makes it doubly difficult for a wicket keeper to be a captain. uh, so he obviously won that World Cup with a very young team, but I think his biggest achievement was the way he transformed the whole ODI team, right? When we went to Australia in 2007, 2008, and he dropped some of the seniors because kind of they were getting old, and ODIs need obviously much fitter fielders, and he backed again a lot of youngsters, young bowlers. Whether initially it was Praveen Kumar, RP Singh, uh, and so on, and he made sure that the team was fit, and he started really focusing on building a team, keeping the 2011 World Cup in mind. The thing was, as a captain, and he also got along very well. He had Gary Custon as a coach for most of the time, and he got along very well with Gary, in the sense that they had their own space and they respected each other. So Custon, obviously, see, at an elite level, Gary Custon is not going to be able to teach Tendulkar how to bat. His role is more of being a mentor, making sure the players are in the right mental space, and the combination of Dhoni and Custon worked very well in that sense. Uh, we also became, the world's #1 Test team when Dhoni was captain. So overall, I think till 2011, he had a very good run, and across all three forms of cricket.
Yeah, I mean, also, I don't know if he was the natural choice at that point of time to lead the team, right? There were the likes of Yuvraj and whoever else, right? And I think T20 was sort of like an experimental thing at that point of time. I don't think anybody realized in 2006-07, how big it would become, right? Certainly, nobody thought that it would replace ODI cricket. And I don't know. I mean, a point about keeping, right? I mean, at a minimum, you're doing about 6 squats or sit-ups every over, right? So, which is like you have to be phenomenally fit to be a keeper and play, 17, 18 years, whatever that he played. So I know, Abhishek, you're from Ranchi. I'm sorry to get your hometown wrong. I mean, I'm sorry to get your hero's hometown wrong. So to make up for it, I mean, the floor is yours to talk about Dhoni's batting, maybe.
So, so I think you mixed it up. So I am from Patna and he's from Ranchi. Right?
I knew somebody was from Patna.
Yeah. So talking about, but I used to go to Ranchi often, especially when Dhoni was in the Indian team in the mid 2000s, and talk with people. And the kind of pride they had in their hometown boy was just phenomenal. But coming back to sort of Dhoni, this incident is shown in the Dhoni movie, right? But I knew of it actually when it happened, and this is like late 90s, where Bihar is playing Punjab in the under 16 tournaments, right? I think it's the Kuch Bihar Trophy or something. And so Dhoni scores about 60 or 80 odd, and Bihar scores about 350. And Yuvraj Singh basically scores the Bihar total all by himself, right? And to bookend that story, I mean, once you have seen a talent like Yuvraj Singh from that sort of vicinity as a youth, you are bound to become a fan of that person, right? And so when the 2011 World Cup comes around, Yuvraj Singh is struggling badly for form, and there are all sorts of calls, especially at the start of the tournament, that he should be made to sit out. And Yusuf Pathan is in excellent form. He's just scored a superb 100 against South Africa, so he should be playing and all that, right? In the number 6 sort of spot. But
Yeah.
what does Dhoni do, right? Dhoni backs the guy he has seen when he was 16-year-old and seen that talent, right? So he backs Yuvraj Singh, who goes on to become the man of the series, right? Who's standing opposite to him when the winning runs are scored. So it's an incredible story, really, of both of them. And coming back to what you asked, right? His batsmanship. I think all through his formative years, Dhoni was basically known as an exceptional hitter of the cricket ball, right? And once he gets selected in the Indian team, I think on the back of some very good performances in the India A team after he was sort of struggling in the domestic circuit and working as a TT in the railways and all that. He got a break in the India A side, scored some really good runs, and he gets a break in around 2004 or 5, right? And very early on, Ganguly sort of realizes that potential, that this guy can be something special. So he sort of promotes him to bat at number 3. And there are a couple of hundreds in his initial few matches. I think I must be in his first 20, 30 odd matches where, he scores a massive 100 against Sri Lanka and then a massive 100 against Pakistan. I think both of them coming at the top of the order, number 3, possibly. So that's the Dhoni that immediately makes a massive impact on the Indian team. So think about it. Till Dhoni, the wicketkeeper position in the India team was donned by people who were really good wicket keepers and not at all impactful batsmen. The only change to that formula was done when India decided that this is not working, and so let's make Rahul Dravid the keeper. He's a good batsman in the middle order, but he allows us to play one more player, right? Whether
I was just going to say, sorry, I was just going to say that you're insulting Rahul Dravid. So
I'm not. I'm actually praising him, right? So he helped turn the balance around for the team. But once Dhoni comes in, we are now at par with an Australia who has a Gilchrist, right? Yeah. Who's a powerhouse batsman of his own. But what happens is very soon, and this happened, one of the rare good things that happened in the Dravid Chappell sort of period is that they realized that there is a problem in the Indian team in terms of chasing, right? We are a top-heavy batting team. Our big stars bat at 1, 2, 3, 4, and we are not able to chase down big totals. This is the period where, international cricket, the runs are becoming, higher and higher, like 280, 300s are becoming almost inevitable, especially in the subcontinent. So you need a lot of depth and power to chase down those totals. And what India then does is go on a streak of, I think, 14 or 16 matches where they win each of these 14 or 16 matches chasing consecutively, right? So whenever they got to chase, they won in that period. And the 3 key players in those chases used to be Dhoni, Yuvraj Singh, and Suresh Raina. And this is basically helps us, 5-6 years down the line, right? When the 2011 World Cup comes in, that is our number 5, 6, 7. That is our engine room, which basically powers us through. And in a sense, Virat Kohli just took that great legacy and made it even better with his exploits that we have seen over the last decade while chasing down scores in ODIs. So Dhoni basically, from that power hitting, he never lost that power hitting, at least not till the very end of his career. But what he added was an exceptional intelligence of reading the game situation and his belief that, look, what we have to do in a chase is take it down to the end, and then it becomes a battle of nerves. And he bet on himself like a poker player that he will make the other guy blink and come away with the victory. And he did that in innumerable matches for India, as well as you can see that for CSK or Pune in the IPL, right? So time and again, if it's the last over, the chances are that it will be Dhoni who's basically going back with the win. So and his power game obviously helped in that, but he basically developed great ability to sort of rotate the strike, understand the match situation, play calmly, and then hit the sort of decisive blows when it mattered. So incredible in terms of his ability to get his team across the line. A match winner like no other, really.
Yeah. So in that, I think Dhoni shared one attribute with Nayan Mongia, which is to send the other batsman away from the crease. Except that Nayan Mongia used to lose the match for us terribly. So, but I think to me, Dhoni is just mindset, right? One word for Dhoni in my book is just mindset, right? Mind over matter, because if you look at his batting technique, it's just, atrocious. Not to sound like one of those, guys who sit in cricket clubs and talk about this kind of stuff, right? About who middle the ball and whatnot. But if you look at any of his stroke playing, right? I mean, his defense was sort of like an apology. Like you're trying to somehow do a namaste, and then how he would dabble outside the off stump again. I mean, very, very nervously. His flicking would always look like he would kind of edge the ball, and even his drives were not really grounded, so to speak, right? And still, I mean, here was a guy who was just backing himself to perform, backing himself to like sort of go out and get those runs for the team. I mean, so truly phenomenal. Truly phenomenal guy. Yeah. So, guys, I mean, I think, it would be remiss not to talk about like a dream 11 across all the three eras, right? Across Gavaskar, Ganguly, and Dhoni. So, do you guys have some names?
Okay.
Which format are we talking about? Are we saying tests or are we saying ODIs?
Let's think
I'm
about...
assuming it's ODIs because there is Dhoni as well. So
let's do ODIs. Yeah.
That's slightly difficult, but yeah, sure.
Because if it's T20, I mean, obviously there are some large sections of this, the pool will get excluded. So,
okay, actually in ODIs, even Gavaskar will probably get excluded. I would only pick, Kapil from that era in an all-time ODI 11, simply because of his ability to turn the ball, turn the match with bat, ball, or even on the field. So I mean, that's the only person I would pick from that era.
Actually, to be fair, let's do test and ODI actually. Yeah. So ODIs, you pick Kapil. So Ashish, your call. I mean, who would you pick from the Gavaskar era?
No, I mean, let me just pick the full team actually. So let me do it for test because that's relatively easier. So yeah, I think tests, I would say Gavaskar and Sehwag to open. That's very logical. Dravid would have batted 3. Sachin 4. Kohli drops to 5 because, well, you can't. He cannot replace Sachin.
You can't move obviously. God from 4.
Yeah. and not in test any which way, right?
Yeah.
So then Kohli goes to 5. Then 6 has to be Ganguly because he's the captain. Otherwise, and which essentially means that VVS Lakshman gets dropped out. Then of course,
I see like a latent bias against South Indians, but okay, we'll let that pass.
I included Dravid, but he's from Indore, so yeah, maybe.
Ouch. Blow.
So, yeah, and 7 of course will be Kapil. 8 will be Dhoni as the wicketkeeper. And then bowling wise, if you want, I would go with Zaheer and Srinath and Kumble as the other bowlers, or Zaheer, Kumble, and Harbhajan, depending on the whether you need more spin or you need more pace. So that would be my 12. So that's easy actually.
Okay. Ability.
Yeah. So my team is exactly same. I'm just seeing that, right? So the only 2 question marks are, so if Ganguly is the captain, VVS misses out. If Gavaskar or Dhoni is given the captaincy, VVS comes in for Ganguly, right? And then the only other sort of question mark is whether it's Ashwin or Harbhajan Singh, right, as the second spinner. Kumble, Srinath and Zaheer Khan are undisputed, right? So
Ashwin,
that's Ashwin. Okay, I'll go with Ashwin, just for the South Indians.
Dude, he's like a truly dependable guy. He can bat.
And he can bat as well, right? 3-4
off spin, leg spin, anything. Just like a hardworking South Indian. So, yeah. So, what's any additions to Ashish's Dream 11?
I would probably drop Zahir and bring in Bumrah into my Test 11, simply because I believe that he will be, the best fast bowler India has produced if he stays fit.
Yeah.
With his speed, his movement and everything,
Swing.
he's just phenomenal. He's I mean he would have made it to some of the top teams across the world if he was born in one of those countries,
Yeah,
even
easily.
when they had their best bowlers.
Yeah.
Other than that, on the second spinner, I would probably pick maybe Chandrasekhar with Kumble instead of Harbhajan, simply because again of his sheer unpredictability and ability to do well on both turning tracks and seaming tracks. So those would be my two changes.
I think it would have. I think. I wonder how it would have been to have like Chandrasekhar or all of those guys play T20s or ODIs. I mean, what do you guys think? Just a quick diversion.
I think Chandra would have been phenomenal, right?
Yeah.
Because he was quick in the air and very hard to hit.
Very hard.
So, on
I think
his good days, I think he would have been amazing. He would have won you a game or two.
Or at the very least, he would have pushed 2 or 3 overs across really quickly, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would have been hard to hit for sure. Yeah. I think I would have Sidhu as a 12th man just for his sheer contribution to Indian cricket. Right? And Ali Irani as the physio. So, all right. I think so. We're at the end of this episode. Any last parting thoughts, guys? This was a fun time.
Yeah, I had actually made an ODI team.
Oh, okay. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'll just go ahead with that. So I would, open obviously with Sachin and Sehwag. I would have Rohit Sharma in the team. Obviously, Ganguly plays as a kind of captain. There would be Kohli, Yuvraj, Dhoni as the keeper, Kapil as the all-rounder, Srinath, Kumble, and again Bumrah. So this would be my dream 11 for ODIs.
That's a nice mix. So Ashish, Abhishek, do you guys have anyone to add?
Yeah,
in that,
so my 11 for ODIs is Tendulkar, Rohit, Ganguly, Kohli, Yuvraj, Dhoni. That's the top 6. Kapil at 7. And then the 4 bowlers are Zahir, Bumrah, Kumble, and Harbhajan.
So I would have gone with the similar names, except that potentially I would prefer Bumrah and Harbhajan over Kumble and what else was discussed? Srinath.
See, there's that bias coming up again and again, Ashish. It's not me. Seriously.
But one interesting thing, Gary, everyone remembers Dhoni fondly for closely won matches. I have a grouse against him for the closely lost match, which is the RPSG versus MI IPL final. Pune teams only serve the purpose of finishing last in pretty much every league, right? Be it football, kabaddi, cricket. We are always the last. So this was the one time which RPSG actually made the finals, and then this was the last time RPSG actually beat the team.
Dhoni, Dhoni really used to give his heart for CSK. Maybe Pune was like a second or third love for him.
Yeah. Well, I mean, both Ganguly and Dhoni did play for Pune for short durations, 3 years for Dada and 2 years for Dhoni. Yeah. So, RPSG lost by 1 run and Dhoni only made 10 out of 13. Krunal Pandya, I think was, if I remember correctly, was the one who teamed him. Right. So, yeah, I think someday he will, whenever he writes about his life and cricket, he'll throw more light about that game, plus, of course, the 2019 World Cup.
See, maybe you just have to face up to the fact that he liked his idli and dosa better than his poha. That's it. So, maybe you guys have to come up with better incentives. Yeah.
Bhakarwadi for Pune, yeah.
No, but wherever Ashish resides, it's a poha town, right? So, like poha fascism. So, all right, guys, this was a super fun episode. One of the most fun episodes I've done. And, I think we should probably do a recurring cricket series sometime, break it up with all of this geopolitics and economics and all of the heavy stuff. I think this is super fun. So thanks, Ashish. Thank you, Srivatsa. Thank you, Abhishek. It's been super fun talking to you guys. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the podcast. If you've been listening, this episode is available on all popular platforms. If you liked it, don't forget to subscribe and share. Also, rate us on your on whatever platform that you listen to. Until next time, stay safe, take care, and Jai Hind.